This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, people who wake up one day unintentionally sounding like they have a foreign accent.
They're part of the, quote, other. They're not one of us. And that can cause another difficulty, isolation.
Foreign accent syndrome, when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
The amount of meals that need to get produced have increased dramatically, and we're seeing that they continue to increase.
The challenges of providing free school meals to millions during this global pandemic. Then,
the best human solvers are still better than the best artificial intelligence solvers, too.
Adventures with crosswords and the puzzling people who can't live without them. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station. And subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
Most of us know people who speak with what sounds like a foreign accent, like this woman.
You wish to know all about my grandfather. Well, he is nearly 93 years old.
Most people who speak this way are from other countries and grew up speaking a language other than English. But this woman, she's as American as apple pie, and she didn't used to talk this way. She's not faking it. She suffers from a rare condition called foreign accent syndrome.
It typically can happen after a stroke, so at any point in time, somebody has an event, and subsequent to that event, they may have some language difficulties, some do, some don't, that go beyond what we might call the foreign accent syndrome. That would be called an aphasia, where there's a language problem, speech and understanding or speaking.
That's Dr. Sheila Bloomstein, Professor Emerita of Cognitive Linguistics and Psychological Sciences at Brown University.
Ultimately, what happens is that clears up and they are left with a residual speech pattern that sounds like they are from another country or have a different dialect from one that they basically had prior to their event. So it sounds like it's a foreign accent.
But it's not really a foreign accent, according to Dr. Jack Riles, Professor of Communication Sciences and Disorders at the University of Central Florida.
The more closely we study it, the more we realize that it isn't an actual accent of a particular place.
If you have a group of people, including linguists or other people who are sitting around listening to the person speaking, they will hear or perceive or believe that it's a particular foreign accent from a different country. But it varies across people extensively. So in one case that we had been involved in, some people thought the person was French, some people thought it was Russian, some people thought it was Eastern European, Germanic. And what's interesting about that is these are very different languages which emanate historically from different language families. They have no relationship to each other, and yet people perceive it to be from that country.
So if it's not really a foreign accent, what is it? Why is it so hard to pin down?
A foreign accent is sort of in the ears of the beholder. We hear it, it sounds like it's foreign, and probably we believe it's because something happens to the way, what we call the prosody, the melody of speech, the rhythm of speech, how you put stress on words like convict and convict. The stress is different, or White House versus White House. Those mean different things, yet the patients have difficulty with that. Sometimes they add sounds. When they produce vowels, they're a little bit different. You can show a change. And that's enough to say to the ear, wait, this isn't quite right.
Brain scans show that most people with foreign accent syndrome have damage in the left hemisphere of the brain as a result of a stroke or other injury. Careful assessment can pick up differences between how these patients speak and the languages their accents seem to mimic.
You can take different characteristics or properties of the sounds of these languages and say, well, is it that language? If a person has a foreign accent in that language, they should then be producing sounds that would be typical of a French speaker, for example, speaking English. And that turns out not to be the case. If you think someone sounds like a French speaker, but their native language is English, what do their P's and B's look like when you measure them acoustically? And lo and behold, they're just like English speakers.
But while linguistic experts can tell the difference between a true foreign accent and foreign accent syndrome, that doesn't help people who are afflicted. Bloomstein says it can be extremely distressing.
Think about for a minute, what would it mean if you woke up one day and you didn't sound like you? Imagine that you have that now all the time. So much of who we are, what we are, our self-identity is how we speak, just like you look in the mirror. This is how I look. Very difficult to deal with. But then think about what the effect would be for you relative to the world out there. People hear somebody with a foreign accent, and they're part of the, quote, other. They're not one of us. And that can cause another difficulty, isolation, feeling like you're no longer a part of things. So it has a really devastating personal effect.
And what's even worse can be the way family and friends react.
Family, for sure, children, and friends. You're just not the same person. And yet, I am the same person. I just don't speak the same. And it's a two-way street, but must be really, really devastating to deal with.
Many of them have recounted the feelings of change of personality, changes of their social situation, of not being accepted by the medical community and believing that they are faking the accent or that they have some type of conscious control over the accent.
Bloomstein says rehab doesn't produce good results very often, so Riles says only about 30% of patients recover their former accent, and it may happen just when a patient's given up hope. But some people are lucky. Remember the woman we heard at the beginning of this story?
You wish to know all about my grandfather. Well, he is nearly 93 years old.
She's one of the few who ultimately got her previous accent back.
You wish to know all about my grandfather. Well, he is nearly 93 years old, yet he still thinks as swiftly as ever.
Researchers aren't sure why she returned to normal and others haven't, but they're studying everything they can about her to find out. You can learn more about all our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
With the threat of coronavirus, social distancing has become the new normal. But staying safe presents unique challenges for more than 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's and more than 16 million family members and friends serving as caregivers.
Public health strategies aimed at limiting contact with others are nearly impossible for people living with Alzheimer's who rely on family caregivers and others every day.
Beth Kallmeyer is Vice President, Care and Support at the Alzheimer's Association.
For example, people living with Alzheimer's may forget to wash their hands or follow other safety precautions. Family caregivers need to be extra vigilant in helping individuals practice good hygiene.
Alzheimer's families also need to anticipate that current care, support, and communication options may change and make backup plans. And try your best to stay calm. People living with dementia take their cues from those around them. The Alzheimer's Association has more tips at alz.org, or caregivers can call its 24/7 helpline 800-272-3900.
Americans are taking sheltering in place seriously. During the week ending March 15th, when social distancing first started to take hold, produce sales were up 40% and potato sales were up more than 72%. Columnist Produce by Pamela says that's because people are filling pantries for the long haul. Frank Muir is president and CEO of the Idaho Potato Commission.
Potatoes have a long shelf life, but as with any produce, it's dependent upon how they're stored. Potatoes should be stored in a cool, dark, dry place, but not in the refrigerator. The cold converts the starch to sugar, which creates a sweet flavor. Also, don't wash your potatoes before storing them, and don't store them near onions. Finally, if your potatoes sprout, that's okay. Just pick the sprouts off and your potatoes will be ready whenever you need them.
Staying in also means you'll need to cook with ingredients you already have on hand. You'll find recipes with that in mind at idahopotato.com. That's idahopotato.com.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Radio Health Journal is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.